Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Joey in Beijing. No longer seen as the sick man of Asia, the Philippines has recently posted one of the fastest growth rates in the world. The presidential election in the Philippines this year is arguably the country's most memorable in a long time. But will the presidential election mark the beginning of a new chapter in the country? And what kind of chapter will that be? Today, we are joined in the Mr. N.R. Tungan, author and columnist, and Professor Zhu Feng, who is Executive Director of the China Center for Collaborative Studies of the South China Sea with Nanjing. But before we get started, let's take a look at this.
Voting has been taking place in the Philippines on Monday to elect a new president from 5 candidates. The winner should be inaugurated at the end of June. More than half of the country's population of 100 million people are registered to vote. Senators and about 18,000 local officials, including mayors, will also be elected. From the latest opinion survey on Thursday, Rodrigo Duterte, the mayor of Davao City, was leading the race with the support of around a third of voters, followed by Senator Grace Poe and former Interior Secretary Mar Rosas, each attracting around a fifth of the voters. Rodrigo Duterte is running on a law and order ticket. He turned Davao City from a criminal stronghold in the 1980s to one of the safest cities in the Philippines today. For the country, which has been suffering from corruption and social disruption for a long time, Duterte's hardline stand to solve these problems has fallen in with the public's desire for a strong leader.
If you make it hard for me to operate government, to bring about peaceful changes, to get rid of drugs and criminals, and to stop corruption, I'll be forced to just really proclaim a revolutionary government. And talking now about the police, they would be the backbone. It's your backbone. The only thing that would make you succeed if there's a revolution is that you're being backed by the armed might.
Under the leadership of the incumbent President Benigno Aquino, the Philippine economy has grown by more than 6%. However, the question is, will the country be able to keep the momentum going once Aquino steps down in June? Despite its stellar growth, the country's economy is also facing huge challenges. The infrastructure has not been able to keep up with the pace of development, and most Filipinos say their lives haven't improved since Aquino came to power. The South China Sea has also been one of the hot topics in the election campaign. Duterte announced that he would open a dialogue with China over the dispute and would aim to exploit the sea with China. Poe and Rosas have said they support the current arbitration process but also favour economic ties with China.
Well, the ballots have been cast, but will probably take several days before the results will come out. But based on the information we've got, what do you think might be the next president of the Philippines, Mr. Zhu?
There's a lot of speculation, but so far we see the mayor, we say Duterte, is absolutely far from runner. So he taking a lead among all the presidential candidates. But the problem is there's a growing opposition in domestic Philippines. A lot of people say, who is he? He's Philippines Donald Trump. He's a bigger mouth, straightforward, anti-establishment. And some conservative in Philippines also just issued a paper in the media and saying if he elected, there will be coup. There will be some sort of intolerable, violence against him. So I could see things has never been getting so tricky with regarding national election in Philippines. But on the other hand, we also see the current outgoing President Aquino III also openly critical to Mr. Duterte and say, yeah, if he will win, then it will bring a disaster to the country. So he say he will organize some sort of big camp of the opposition to bring him to some sort of failure. So then I always see there's a lot of such a pressures, a lot of uncertainties. So now I'm also open eyes as well as I can and see how he's going with his election.
And even President Aquino said that there should be a coalition among others to rally against Duterte. Do you think that will work, or in the end, he still come out as the winner?
Well, actually, he was proposing that, but unfortunately, the rest of the candidates did not drop out. People have to understand who are watching that this is not where you have to get to 50% or 51%. It's not getting the majority. It's simply the one candidate who gets the most amount of votes is the president. Now, when you're talking about a field where there are 39 different people on the ballot, it can get very spread out.
So
and this is one of the issues.
It needs to be a majority over 50%.
It does not need to be a majority. He simply has to poll more than any of the other candidates, which leads to a situation where he could get literally 30, 40% and still be the president of the Philippines. This would, of course, engender some hostility. But right now, people are predicting that it probably will be a fairly large landslide by Filipino standards towards him. He's saying the kind of rhetoric that they want. As you pointed out, this seems to be very popular in democracies across the world, including the U.S. Strong men standing out, voicing populist, if somewhat impossible, standards or ideas, but attracting a lot of attention.
So President Aquino obviously said that he doesn't want Duterte to succeed him. President Aquino has been doing pretty well in terms of economic performance of Philippines, but why his message didn't deliver in his own country? Does that say anything about his presidency?
Well, there are always questions in the Philippines about corruption and who's getting what. Remember, he's one of the 5 families that's been controlling the Philippines since its very beginning. And there's this real sense, not only in the Philippines, but around the world against the elites, this idea that they have somehow stolen democracy and the system itself, the economic system, for their own benefit. So there are real questions. For instance, these bases that have been given to the U.S., there are questions about who owns the land around them and who will benefit the most from that. So there are a lot of questions that go on. Many of these candidates who are on there are already mired in allegations of corruption, which has been dogging them. There's a few of them that have. The most qualified one, who had served in all 3 branches of the government, judiciary, legislative, and the executive, unfortunately, because of a very difficult health situation. She has stage 4 lung cancer.
But under his leadership, Philippines has posted probably one of the most remarkable economic achievements, the fastest in the world. Why the Filipinos are not satisfied with this current status quo?
Yeah, I think there are 2 things. One is, I think, just that Tango mentioned, so there's with a growing wave of the populism. The people got fed up with some sort of political establishment. So I think Mr. Duterte also present his some sort of with a trumpet card. He always just finding out his view. Every money he got is clean. So every money he got is legitimate. I think that kind of the mood really, I think, attracting people. Yes, on the one hand, people got drunk in some sort of a growing economic growth, but on the other hand, we also see the mounting dissatisfaction to some sort of with a widespread, corruptions or something like that. So today, we also see this election just serving as some sort of eruption. Then the people's dissatisfaction just blew up. So then Mr. Duterte also just benefit a lot from some sort of such a populist move across the country.
I'd add one other thing, and this is where it really hits people, it's crime. The level of crime in the streets of Manila is just horrendous. And he can present that he has taken his city, Duarte, has taken his city and made it, you said 9th, it was actually ranked as high as the 4th safest city in the world, not just in the Philippines. So he's really made a major accomplishment there, and people are sick and tired of being threatened as they walk along the streets or in their homes.
But as you said, he has been running on law and order platform. He said that he will do whatever it takes to fight against criminals. But the problem is the method he's running the justice system. He said he's willing to kill maybe from 1,000 to 10,000 criminals, let those bodies of the criminals be thrown into Manila Bay and be fed up by the fish. Those kind of rhetorics, will that be sensible and realistic?
You know, you hope not, but you never know. It's kind of like Donald Trump and his, I'm going to build a wall all along the Mexican border. I'm going to impose 45% tax increases, tariffs on China. You hear the rhetoric. You don't believe it because you say it's just not possible that anyone could get away with this. I mean, everyone would be watching this. There are allegations that he did do this with death squads in his own town. But right now, the problem is that the people are feeling that they'd rather have this solution than a legal one.
Yeah. Campaign rhetoric usually is some sort of, we say, overplayed tactic, just for the purpose of just keeping the people just to catch the eye. So then after someone just win the election and become the top leader, his real policy will be very, very obviously from his some sort of a campaign rhetoric. So I don't think Mr. Duterte also will just fulfill what he say in the campaign. So it's some sort of a tactic.
You have to be careful there. He has implemented these policies in his when he was a mayor, so it's not theoretical.
In a local way.
Yes.
Yeah, but the problem is throughout the Philippines, we also see some sort of such a traditional, shortcoming. Last decades, everybody knows the Philippines is a very, very interesting country because democracy and political institutions and even political culture always just present its own, the bizarre nature. So then, if he win, he would like to overcome all in a rush. Now, yes, he will do something he promised. But the problem is if he just trying to put everything he taught in the campaign into the practice.
But the problem is what the Philippines is facing is not just a crime problem. There are a lot of problems, inequality, lag behind infrastructure, how to maintain economic momentum. But Mr. Duterte have never uttered clearly what a comprehensive set of policies, economic and social policies were there. He just said, I want to kill those criminals, I want to fix the system. How? In what way?
Oh, but this is the great thing about populism. You don't actually espouse any concrete answers. You give people kind of the red meat that they're looking for. They're fed up, they're mad, angry, frightened. So you appeal to those things. This is what's happening in the U.S. This is what's happening not only in the Philippines, but around the world.
Another candidate is Mr. Marcos, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. He's the son of former strongman, dictator Ferdinand Marcos. Marcos has promised a similar decisive leadership of strongman. It seems that the Filipinos are now in the mood of welcoming a new kind of leadership, a strongman leadership, decisive leadership. Don't put so much emphasis on due process and rule of law. What do you think of this kind of a style of politics?
It seems unbelievable that they're going back after kicking Marcos out and all the cheering and everything that went into removing him from power, to have them feeling nostalgic about a time when there was no rule of law, corruption was rampant, and things were not the good old days.
So the Filipinos forgetful of the old woes?
No, I don't think that,
or just
family background. Yeah, family background will be a big barrier because you look at the Korean. So former dictator Park Geun-hye and his daughter also very successful win the national election in Korea 3 years ago. And so far, of course, President Park Geun-hye's popularity is dropping a little bit, but I don't think that the Koreans really care about her family background. So they always see it's some sort of a national reconciliation. Also, the people's achieved. So that's why I consider same thing now is going Philippines. A lot of us people, Filipinos, just believe yes, his father is a dictator, but in the past 3 decades, democratic, the transition in Philippines also ended
But
up.
he's actually
It is
saying
not
he
a-
wants to return to his father's
It's not
era.
a dynastic politics, as many believe that a Filipino
is.
politics is.
Same five
dynamic.
families.
Yeah.
You have another
Yeah.
presidential candidate who's also the son of a former president. I mean, it just goes on. And this is why people are fed up and they're turning to an outsider, even though you cannot always believe that he will do the things he says. They just simply said, we are tired of the elites who've been running the situation.
All right. Thank you very much. We're talking about the foreign policy aspect of the Philippine presidential election in the second half of this program. Don't go away. So most probably in a few days, the Philippines will have a new president, but the Philippines has this problem in foreign policy. President Aquino has been leading the campaign against China in its territory disputes in the South China Sea. How much weight does foreign policy carry in the presidential election in the Philippines? Mr. Zhu.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting question, and I think it's still some sort of mysterious, the things we needed to just debunk. Based on their some sort of TV presidential candidate debate, Mr. Duterte, of course, sounds more constructive. He say if he win, he will restart the mutual negotiation with China. Then he thinks some sort of appealing to the international tribunal is not
working.
Not working, not good. So he sounds very positive, very constructive. But the problem is we also see today's Philippines some sort of, we say, strategic choice is leaning toward the U.S. Enhancing the military alliance with the United States, then seeking Japan and Australia and other players for its some sort of
And you think he will continue Aquino's policy?
Yeah, it's some sort of, we say, essential elements of the current Philippines foreign policy.
I think he'll go back to a more balanced point of view. He's very much of a
How
pragmatist.
much?
I think a lot, because what his concern is income. He needs to get more jobs, economic development.
So he will play the card of economic cooperation with China.
Yes, he wants to speed things up. The problem with, even if you win this dispute with China in the international court, it doesn't change anything. China is not going to accept it.
That's what
right?
he said, because
and
it's
where it's
it won't make
unenforceable.
any
It's
difference.
international law. So at that particular point in time, what do they have? They have enmity with China, and that will stop trade. They see the Belt and Road Initiative going on. They see a lot of economic projects going on. As you pointed out, very, very poor issues in terms of infrastructure. They need investment. This is not the time to be picking fights with somebody who could be helping you. And he's quite different from the last administration because they had their own priorities of working with the U.S. to get these bases and these types of things. He doesn't. He's now moved beyond that, and he's going to have to create the economic wherewithal.
But what kind of
make
a
it work.
nuanced foreign policy will he have? Will he talk to China bilaterally, as many Filipinos arguably say impossible?
Well, why is it
yeah.
impossible? I mean, he could do it, right?
No, I still very questioning how far he will change or he will go from his predecessor, President Aquino administration. Yes, judging from his campaign rhetoric, he sounds very productive. And he also would like to just get back to the negotiation table with China. And he also would like to highlight some sort of economic incentive in the relations with Beijing. But the problem is there's a couple of, we say, very defining components to his foreign policy. For example, if he just quickly switch the course, then there will be inherent tension between his presidency
And the
United States. Second, growing tension between his presidency and his Uniformed People's Service. So then the question is how brave he could be or how courageous he could be to leave all such some sort of, we say, bureaucracy behind him, and then turning on to a new foreign policy course. So we have to wait and see. But one thing we can be completely sure.
What kind of a political climate is there inside the Philippines to change the needle?
Look,
in terms of his relations with China?
He doesn't have to do about face. All he has to do is not push. All right, that would be the seminal changing the direction of it. He will not, given his nature and the kind of, patriotic things that he says. I mean, at one point he said, I'm going to ride a jet ski out to the island, I'm going to plant the Philippines flag and things like this. This is all bravado. He's not going to give up an inch of land. However, he can withdraw these processes. He can take a much slower
the process of the international arbitration?
That might be too
happens
afterwards. What happens afterwards and what kind of stance the Philippines takes on it is going to be another issue. And he's probably going to be in control and making those decisions. He can then, with that in hand, come to China and say, listen, how are we going to work this out? And this is what I think is what he's aiming for. Not, I'm going to give away any territory, quote, claimed by things. It's just not within his nature.
And what do you think China should do with the new administration in power in the Philippines? What kind of message does China want to send to the new leader?
Of course, first of all, I think it's a window of opportunity for both countries to improve their relations. So it will be a very important opportunity for both leaders to get their relations. Now it's very devastating, and get back to the sound track, because China strongly sponsors some sort of bilateral negotiation whenever we argue over sovereignty or territory. Second most, I think, thing is very important. We also don't see Philippines as just decisively leaning toward the U.S. Some sort of long-lasting balance between the two powers. For example, President Arroyo, the government just very smartly and firmly maintain such a balance. Then President Aquino overturned such a traditional course. Of course, we will be much welcome.
So you think the new president will roll back?
Yes, it's very, very possible. Yes, so then I hope China could very incoherently just reach after Mr. Duterte just to win the election.
I think it's very simple. If China makes a goodwill gesture with some economic projects that are going to put infrastructure in place in the Philippines, this will greatly soften all the kind of political rhetoric which was built up under the previous administration.
Most of the ASEAN countries have very strong and close economic relations with China. The Philippines is an exception. What can China offer to incentivize the Philippines to upgrade its economic cooperation?
Investment. They're desperate
with
for
China,
investment.
which is in the interest of both.
I don't think some sort of way, say, economic incentive could just trade away some sort of leading policy games. For example, look at the China-ASEAN relations in general. It's improved a lot. Some sort of mutual connectivities is really deepening and wide. Most of the ASEAN countries still very skeptical to the Chinese strategic intention. They still become a very,
but not
very
hostile as a Philippine.
Yes, economic incentive could just getting these ASEAN countries less hostile, but it doesn't automatically mean that we're getting them more friendly. So my view is...
But that's what you want. you take what you can get, and right now with China development...
What do we do to let them be more friendly and have confidence in this kind of relationship?
Well, China has been pushing trade and development. The U.S. is pushing trade and security. These are the two different tacks that have been going on. As long as China continues to offer a large market, and remember, these are countries that all have positive, they don't have deficits. They have deficits with the U.S., they have trade surpluses with China.
So you're saying we should do more to allay their security concerns from the ASEAN countries?
Well, of course, yes. Yeah. There has to be that, but trade is going to trump all in the end. You need, these are all countries that need markets, they need places where they can make money.
Then what do we do to make them less fearful about China's economic and military power?
No, I think it's a good question. So, of course, we should get them a lot of economic incentive, public good. But on the other hand, we should also offer some sort of, adequate collaboration of their security concern. So then, actually, we have a lot to do. For example, so how the both sides could less, just confrontational over disputed water areas in South China Sea. It will be something worth of a reconsideration. But on the other hand, we also should just showing some sort of growing resilience in handling of those sovereign disputes, because the country, no matter how big.
But are we going in the direction, because the ASEAN countries still blaming China making constructions on the islands? China's not satisfied with Philippines taking the case to the International Tribunal. It seems the tensions on the rise on the...
Yep, no, I don't think so. I think the arbitration is one thing, but the island construction is another. We couldn't just put them at the same level.
I would disagree with that, but I would say that it does cause tension, and I think that's pretty clear. But I would offer this ray of hope. The fact is that this is coming to a close. What happened when the UNCLOS was passed, this UN Convention of Laws of the Seas, was it solved problems mostly in the Western countries, but created new problems in areas especially like the South China Seas. They knew about this prior to it, yet they went ahead with it anyways. So now they're suffering the consequences. But the fact is, it's been a land grab. First, Vietnam was the one who was grabbing a lot of islands along there that they had signed over back to China. All right, but they grabbed them, they controlled them. China was actually late to the game in terms of trying to figure out how it is. But at some point, all right, all the land that can be used will be claimed, and at that point, people will come to the negotiating table, and it will be basically what you have, you hold.
And do you think we will have a code of conduct in the South China Sea anytime soon? Will that be something conducive to peaceful development?
No, I don't. I think the negotiation of COC, Code of Conduct, will be a time-consuming project.
It won't be easy.
Of course, absolutely it's not. But it's some sort of a very essential requirement, very adequately for all parties concerned. So that's why we're still sticking to the process of negotiation of a COC. But on the other hand, yes, with a territory disputes usually is very, very sensitive, because definitely just being very inflaming the people's, very sincere feelings. Nationalism to them. So that's why I consider, yes, the real essence of the territorial dispute in South China Sea is very obvious, is land grab. But the problem is, even we should work on that field to move gently, and also just initiate something smartly and appealingly.
The irony is that a strong nationalist is the only one who can come to the table and actually settle it. If you had a real peacenik, somebody give it away, it's more difficult.
But we don't know whether the new president will be a nationalist leader or not, at least not at the moment. Thank you very much, Mr. Tongden and Mr. Zhu, for your analysis. And you've been watching Dialogue here on CCTV News. I'm Zhou in Beijing. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.